I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. We're going to talk about lining things up. Have you got your ducks in a row? Sometimes that's not as easy as we think, and it's an interesting expression. Some things do need to be lined up, some maybe not so much. Today we're going to talk about creating a horizontal line to anchor your painting. We're working on things that should probably stay on the horizontal. Shorelines, the base of mountains, areas in your painting, in your landscape paintings, where you need to put that anchor. And that's, it's a simple concept, but not always that easy to grasp. So we'll talk about that today. I'm going to be painting on my beautiful Arches paper, my favorite of all time. This is 9 by 12 inch, 100% cold press, 100% cotton rather, cold press rough. I love the rough texture. For my landscapes, I just feel that that gives just an extra bit of depth, and also where the raised parts of the paper are, allow sometimes for that little bit of the white paper to show through and give that little bit of sparkle as watercolors were meant to do. So I've attached that beautiful 100% cotton paper to a little piece of black Coroplast. It comes in large sheets at our local craft store, and I just cut it down to allow me to have a bit of a working surface where I can tape my papers down. If I'm not painting on a block, which is already secured on all sides, it's it's nice to tape your paper down, just to keep it from buckling and getting away on you. I'm going to paint a little landscape today. I'm going to do it quite quickly, just in order to get it to a point where I can show you where those horizontal indications can come into play and how they can make your painting have more depth, more focus. It just really brings portions of your painting to another level of perception, actually. So I think I'm going to paint with a larger brush today. I'll go in starting, I think, with my 3-line solo brush. These are available from Watercolor Online, Michael Solovyev's studio. And he's based in Canada. If you are from another country, which so many of you are, that's another just aside here, I'm so thankful for all of you around the world who are here on the regular to watch me paint with watercolor and share my joy of the processes with you. But if you are from another country, his products are available on Amazon as well. If you go to the Watercolor Online site, you can click through to his link there and go to Amazon and get your beautiful supplies. The palettes come from there as well, and nice big wells to enable your brushes to pick up that luscious pigment. So with most landscapes, I do generally wet the whole page. Because this one is 100% cotton, I'm going to give it a nice coverage with some nice clean water, and then I'm going to let it sit for just a second. We're going to give our little ducks a little rain shower here. These ducks are super ducks. I understand. They're a gift from my friend Lorenz, my friend and videographer from Process Art Discovery, and I think he intended them for my grandsons, but I'm having fun with them today. So I can tip this and see where there's a fair bit of water on most of the page. There's a couple of areas where my brush didn't quite hit the page. I'm not going to worry about that. The dry brushing effect, when there's this much water on the page, isn't going to become a major part of the painting. But we're going to paint quickly because we need to get to that point where I want to put in the indication for those horizontal lines. One of our subscribers asked specifically about that process. I put a little clip out not long ago that said keep your horizons horizontal, and it's important for us to have these little elements in our paintings. I'm just using some Mayan dark blue out of the side of my palette. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's in one of the mixing wells on the side. I just had some Mayan dark blue sitting there, and I'm going to cover the whole page with that. This is called a wash, an initial wash. And a little wee hair got on there. That's okay. At this point, I can focus on my sky a little bit. Very often when people paint skies, they will use a cobalt or an ultramarine blue and add a bit of sienna, burnt sienna, that kind of thing with it. I sometimes will barely touch my, now I've got Aussie red gold. I don't think I want that in my sky. I'm going to go rinse my brush again and just pick up the slightest hint of quinacridone gold. And I will run that through the sky, just softening that off a little bit. Just the Mayan dark blue can be a bit on the gray, gloomy side, so sometimes I like to add a tiny bit of that gold in there just to brighten things up a bit. Then my dampish paper towel, kind of rounded. I'm going to make some cloud shapes. I don't want the paper towel to be angular and make those kind of marks. So I'm just going to round the paper towel a slight bit. It's on the dampish side. That allows it to make a smoother, rounded shape. And then just ever so lightly, I'm going to move this around. I'm changing the angles of it. I'm going to just pick up the slightest bit of pigment off the page. It will continue to disperse. The pigment will continue to disperse throughout the water that's on the page. I don't want this sky to be too dramatic, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it today. So I'm going to leave that. I think that'll evolve as it needs to become a nice subtle sky. I'm going to put some mountain shapes in, and then we're going to have a little bit of a lake or a river area, and then I'll put a little bit of interest in the foreground, maybe some shrubbery shapes, that kind of thing. So typically for my mountains, I will go in with the same color as the sky, the Mayan dark blue, and I will just create some shapes to indicate a mountain. I don't mind that the shapes are a little bit jagged and irregular on the top. That kind of, to me, indicates that there's some tree shapes. In the center part here where the paper is still quite damp, you're going to get some diffusion happening, and that's wonderful as well. And we'll shape this mountain area down. Put some on this side, and then maybe over here we'll have a bit of an indication of some kind of land coming down this way. I'm just getting color on the page. I'm not concerning myself at this point with any detail. Now I just cleaned my brush off because I see I have slopped a tiny bit of that blue in there. And I'm going onto the surface of this paper. It's quite wet. You can see it's still quite wet there. And it's buckled. And to get those dots off, I want to do it while it's wet. Thankfully, I noticed it. If I was to go in after it dried, I'd have to probably turn them into birds or something, because to get them off the surface at that point would be not as easy. And I also see here, because it's wet and because I've dabbed out and dried the area where that cloud is, I've got just the slightest bit of a harsh edge. So with your brush, dry most of the, well, pretty much all of the wetness off. It still feels cool to the touch, so it's not completely dry, but it is dry enough that I can just skim the surface, the lightest touch, and I can feather that wetness out into those areas where that blue was and up into those cloud shapes to keep those bloom edges from happening. And now I see I've got some wee hairs, and that happens often with our brushes. They do tend to lose the odd little hair. If that happens, it's hard. It's really hard to resist that tendency to go in there and pick it off. If you wait till the page dries, it's usually a lot easier to get that little hair off of there. So rather than compromise what's going on the page with the paints and the pigment, I would leave that. So I'm just going to go in again with some, just dabbing this with the side of my brush. I've picked up some nice thick rich pigment, and we're just going to make some tree shapes. What I'm doing is kind of waiting for this area down here to dry a little bit more. When I want to go in and lift out paint to indicate the shoreline, I kind of want it to be more on the dry side. If I lift out paint when it's still too wet, the surrounding areas that are wet are just going to fall right back into that line that I've removed. So I've got some nice blue shapes there. This kind of reminds me of you know, some of the lakes in northern Alberta where there's not a lot of tall standing trees. There's a lot of low shrubbery and low trees around. And I'm going to go in now with, we'll take some of my favorite Undersea green, thick on my paintbrush. And I'm just going to indicate just a couple of more tree shapes for the front level. I'm not going to fill in all of these areas. I don't mind a little bit of white there that allows for some interest, some depth, a little bit of white, a little bit of dark. We're adding shapes here that often many will just become a shadow to enhance the shape of a tree or a shrub or something that we're working with. And we'll put a few just sort of coming up here on this little embankment on this front side. This is starting to dry here quite nicely. And if we're going to have this area here as a lake, I'm going to, again, wet the brush, clean it off, and dry off as much as possible. And just with the feather touch, I just want to go in and add a little bit of color to this lake surface. And this is kind of where the dry brushing comes in. Feathering that color through the paper at this point, at this level, has pretty much become dry. And I'm just going to, just the faintest little bit of blue to bring that through. When you're adding color, it's always a good idea to start from the edge and feather your way through. If I was to take some color on my brush and start here, I'm going to have a mark where I initially touch down. Especially if you're a little heavy-handed, that can really be something that will become a challenge to deal with if you have that. So I'm just the lightest of touches, and I'm going to leave this area here where the bits of white are showing through. And I'm going to go up and just underneath this line of trees, soften that bottom line just a tiny bit. That's going to become a shadow of those trees in this bit of water. I don't even know what to call it. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a pond, a large pond. How about that? And I do want this to dry just a tiny bit more. It's a bit buckly. That's going to be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to make straight lines, because it's hard to do that when your paper's up and down. So while that little line across the bottom of those shrubs and those trees is drying, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to incorporate a tiny bit of the quinacridone gold. This is a color that is just so spectacular and fairly thick on my brush. Actually, I will add just a tiny bit more water to my palette. See, there's just on the tip of the brush, and we'll intermittently sort of add that in. We could, no, I've got blue on it. We can, you know, maybe make a couple of these tree shapes up above, have some of that gold coming through, and then of course down in the front, because we want to keep things kind of, I say balanced, but we don't want it to be symmetrical. We don't want it to be polka dotty. We don't want to have the same color and the same shapes at regular levels. So we will just add those in. The quinacridone gold does tend to push the other colors away, so you get these lovely light shapes just happening on their own. And I think that that's kind of magical. Again, with the damp paper towel, just rounded, balled up in my hand slightly, and I'm just some irregular dots and dabs. By doing this, I create light spots. So where the light is going to be hitting the top edges, the surfaces of the brush bushes. And I don't have a specific light source really in this painting. I don't have a sun coming through. And so this is kind of a generalized way to approach that. If I had a sun and it was coming from a specific direction, then I would want, you know, more light on certain sides of some of the areas. So you can see how often it's what you take away that creates interest and beauty in your painting. So I think we're almost ready here to start working on that horizon line. And this will work for paintings on paper. It's really effective on when we do watercolor on canvases with our credit cards and get those lovely shapes happening. Often we do need that definition to help us create the image and just bring it a little more into the realm of possibilities. Often people have a hard time visualizing, seeing what's there, and sometimes, you know, it's more than just a band of some colors, and by defining some edges, we can keep that more apparent. So I'm going to go in with, and I did want to show you, there are, where did I put it now? There are flat watercolor brushes that are soft, and we don't necessarily want a soft brush. Isn't that interesting? I thought I put it right here so I could show you. Here's an example. So this is a watercolor brush, but it's very soft, and it's made soft so that it does hold more water, more pigment, and is more gentle on your paper. acrylic paints typically go on canvas. It's a tougher material. Your brushes can be stiffer. They give you more ability to direct your paints, and they're made for acrylic paints. Watercolor brushes typically are softer, more gentle. But for what we're going to do now in lifting out and indicating shorelines, I love to use a little acrylic brush. It's the hairs, the bristles are very, I want to say chiseled at the end. There's not a lot of real estate across that top end. Okay. Whereas here, for example, this would not work to pull out a line of anything. Even when it was wet, it would be quite thick. What we're looking for is a nice fine line and a fairly stiff bristle so that we can direct it more precisely. If we were using a brush like this, you can see where it's not going to give me that preciseness. We're using this one, we can keep that line quite sharp. They may be called, I don't think they're called a scrubber. I just think they're called maybe a, let me see if it says it on here. It says synthetic brush bright. Don't know what that means because I'm not an acrylic painter. So, but I will see if I can find a link and put it in the description for you. So I wet this brush, dab off most of it, and I'm going to visualize where this shoreline maybe has some little, I guess they're called inlets, little jogs and things along the shoreline. Because I've dabbed out some color and added some color there's some shapes along the bottom. And so I can imagine that these little guys are on the shoreline of this water. And I'm just going to use this little brush, and I'm wiping it off as I pick up some of the paint. This is still damp to the touch. If it was dry, I could still go in a little more water on my brush and wet that line that I wanted to remove, and then it would come out quite nicely. So I'm just looking at places where I can create some interest, but I'm keeping my lines straight, keeping my lines horizontal. I'm not interested in making one long horizontal line. That's going to detract from my painting. It's going to cut it at that point and divide it in a way that I prefer not to see happening. So I'm keeping my lines short and horizontal, and I'm varying the heights of them. So that will give me a nice indication of an irregular shoreline. And you can remove as much pigment as you feel necessary to make these. Now this looks almost like maybe a little pathway there. We could indicate maybe something coming down to the water. And wet the brush, dab the excess water off. If you were to add more water at this point, when the page is still damp, you will get that blossom, that bloom, because the water is going to want to flow out into the areas that are still moist. So we're going to keep it dry, and I mean, you'll know how that's working, and if it doesn't feel like it's taking any, enough of the pigment off, get it a bit damp again. Start again, but the important rule is horizontal. Keep those lines as straight as you can horizontally. It's human nature for us to want to do the windshield wiper motion. It's it just seems like the natural thing to do. So this is keeping those little more motions straight, and start small. Do little bits. You can always join them and change them later. Add a bit more water, take out a bit more pigment, shape these little and you can use this little brush as a way to shade and pull out your pigment. This almost looks to me like there's some rocks happening there. We can go back to our little piece of plastic. I don't know that it's damp enough. The page is probably dried more than we would need, but it's not bad. If we wanted to carve in some rocks, that would have been something we would have wanted to do when it was a bit damper. If I really decided that that was absolutely what we needed there, I could definitely add some more pigment, some more moisture, gently, very carefully, into that area and let it set in for just a couple of minutes and then go in with the plastic tab. But I kind of like how these rock shapes and bush shapes are forming here. And I think if I just go in with this little brush and pull out some shapes, and you can see where if you make these little lines at various levels, they will become indicative of little areas on the shore. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge to see because this paper rather has buckled. I'm going to see if I can pull it off, and maybe not. There we go. I've sort of wrapped that tape around the bottom of the coroplast here, and that didn't work so well. I'm just going to pull this up and see if I can. Oh, nope, it's not going to go. I thought maybe I could flatten it out a little bit, but the paper is just too saturated. But I hope you can see how these little lines, they're subtle, but they're effective. If you feel that your area under your shoreline is a bit dark here, where I thought maybe we could use some shadow, I'm going in now with the brush. As I say, it's cool. I can tell there's moisture on it, but not enough to puddle and pool. And I can use the bigger brush to pull out some of those darker shapes and darker colors and smooth them out a little bit into the body of the water below. I would hesitate to draw my brush down this way. The flow of the paint, the flow of the water, the landscape orientation of the page is indicating this nice horizontal line. If I was to go in, which is often kind of what our brain wants to do when we want to make shadow shapes coming in, if I was to do that, that's going to disrupt this flow. So I'm going to try to keep this as straight across as I can, and just indicating that there's water there. And because I've pulled some of that out, I just want to keep these lines in here horizontal again, and maybe that's a little creek coming in to the water area. And every time I raise my brush and take something out at another level, it gives me those rock shapes and those bush shapes. Like I say, have some fun with it. Take some nice quality paper. This is not going to work as well on student grade cellulose kind of paper. Those papers are great for sketching and maybe some line and wash or some light watercoloring. But when you're painting in layers and with thick pigments and you're maneuvering your pigments and lifting them out, and that, you want to have a tougher paper. You want something that's going to stand up. And even the tougher papers, you can only take so much. They're only paper. They only have a certain amount of sizing on them. So it's a good idea to have a bit of a plan in mind and be specific. I wouldn't want to do much more scrubbing, and actually I wouldn't want to do much scrubbing on a bigger scale. But I think for the most part, like I said, it's very subtle, but it gives you an idea of how to keep that horizontal horizon line working with your painting. So apply it. See what that can do for you in your landscapes. Carve out some shorelines, carve out some rocks, and let me know how you do. Let me know if this demonstration was helpful to you in grasping that concept and keeping those lines intermittent and varying, but enough that you can actually subtly create that level of depth and an interest in your painting. I'll continue on. I'll add some more trees and some other areas, but I think I love that the subtleness is there on that shoreline, and gives me, I don't know, I think a sense of depth that I was looking for. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. We had some fun looking at how to define a shoreline. I hope this was helpful to you. Let us know. If you like what you've seen, subscribe to the channel or visit the members area.